Got a 5960-ish Les Paul GA-40 Gibson amp here. Pardon the clutter in the background. Typical degradation of the chromed panel, but not in too bad shape, nothing too flaky. And the rear panel has been replaced or re-Tolexed with this tweed. I'm about to open it up, and when I do that, I'll have to be on the lookout for any asbestos padding that they used for thermal insulation. Let's see. Got an old Alnico speaker. So let's see what it looks like on the inside after I take that rear panel off. No asbestos on the rear panel, which is good. Has a bunch of older tubes and some Chinese tubes. The owner is reporting a high-pitched whistling sound. A lot of original stuff. These 1-watt carbon resistors are less prone to having problems than the half-watts. New cathode bias circuit there. Fairly well done. All the original filter caps are long gone, and it has these IC caps in place, which could be failing. These are not the crappy ones that Fender uses these days, so they're not automatically bad. It's had the rectifier tube socket replaced, and the wiring there doesn't look that neat, but isn't automatically problematic. It's got a 3-conductor power cable added. I'll check how that was done. I'll make sure that's done correctly into code. I mean, it's not straight to code, I can tell just by where they have it grounded, but with these older amps, sometimes you do what you can to get it functional and safe, even if it's not exactly what you would find in a new commercially built amp. Whoever did all these silicon blobs is not my friend, but that's not too hard to remove. Let me get this to focus where I want it. All the tube sockets have these, let me get my pointer, have these rubber grommets. Rivets are passed through. So each component is isolated from vibration. What often happens, especially on the tweed fenders, is the rubber in the grommets degrades and you have metal on metal with lots of space and gapping and things whistling. I'm not seeing that here. I'm not seeing any degradation, so that's good. Everything looks pretty clean. It may just be a noisy tube. Given the new filter caps, I'm not that concerned, but I will certainly be looking at them closely as much as I can, see in there to the little spaces to see if I see any leakage. I think I'm just going to bring this up. I'm not even going to use a variac since the filter caps are new, but I am going to use a current limiter and meter just to see roughly where things are, and then listen and see if I can find the problem and report back. Little oddities, I should point out. Had a 1-amp fuse instead of the 3-amp, and none of these knobs except the volumes and the frequency are where they should be. These two knobs need to be taken off and redone so that they actually match the controls on the panel. That needs to be cleaned. There is that feedback. That sounds like a tube to me. Yeah, I bet we're just one bad tube away from a better sounding amp. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, I just swapped V1 and V2, and while it's not feeding back anymore, V1 is the noisy one. It used to be in V2, which was the one that whistled. So we got one bad tube, and an amp this nice, I think we could do better than that Chinese. So if it's just in the vibrato, it's probably fine. I haven't checked that. I will say that this pot here cleaned up a little bit, not entirely. That's just using the tremolo, but that pot's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen. And I'm not sure if it's original to the amp, so I think I can do better on that. I may be replacing that pot. I've not checked the tremolo yet. There's a little deoxit that dripped down on the board. I'll clean all that up. But with an amp this old, if you just need a preamp change, that's pretty nice. If it just needs a preamp tube and a pot, this would be really simple and really inexpensive for the owner, which is what makes people happy. Okay, got to change out this depth pot on the tremolo. I know that's not original, and it's got a unwanted noise there. I got to change out the 5189 for V1. I can get a new old stock for about $15 to $20. That's no big deal, which is nice when you have a relatively rare tube that's still affordable. The tone pot is loose, the connection. So I'm going to take all the knobs off, retighten all the hardware, and then when I put the knobs on, it'll align with the indicators on the control panel. But here's what it is sounding like. Those were not sounds good old Les ever intended anyone to get from an amp with his name on it. But it's just so darn quiet at the Les Paul approved volumes. It's got a little bit of a click when you have the tremolo at higher speeds. You just got to offset that with lower depths. So, got a good game plan going forward. And I will confirm that the cathode bias circuit on the output section is idling where it ought to be for these tubes. I've not even looked to see what the tubes are yet. That's not a big deal. It's just a matter of changing this 10-watt resistor if necessary. Though it's sounding good as is, unless it's just roasting things, which it doesn't seem to be, I think it's going to be a good one. So, relatively easy things to change. The owner's going to be very happy. And once everything's done, I'll do a real video where you can really hear it. Okay, we've got the pots and jack nuts all tight. I cleaned off the chrome panel up top with a little bit of WD-40, just a slight amount. Gets all the dust off and any place where the chrome is flaked, exposing the steel beneath. It gets a little bit of protection to slow the process. Made sure it doesn't soak into the old Tolex covering. Wasn't trying to do a Martha Stewart level job, you know. That depth pot is definitely not original and is bad. So a 500K linear CTS is coming. And having looked up the schematic, This is not the tremolo tube. This is the phase inverter. So this amp can do a little bit better than this Chinese 12AX7. We'll get something nice there. And I think earlier in the video I misspoke and said 5189. It's a 5879 tube, and I can get a new one of those for about 15, 20 bucks, which is nice. Now, new old stock one, so that's quite good. A couple other things. First of all, these two pots are original. The others have been changed. These are old pots, but they're not original to the amp. Gibson never quite treated the amp as seriously as they did the guitars. These original pots here are split shaft, even though they have set screw on the knobs. So getting those on there securely without compressing and damaging the split shafts can be a little bit tricky. I will put to the owner the option of replacing those two pots with some solid shafts like the one on the left there for their most reliable performance. And the original pots can be kept with the amp in case it ever sells to a collector. That said, these non-optimal split shaft pots have been going since 1959, 1960s, so yeah, it may be a non-issue. One other thing I forgot to show earlier is that this Gibson, like many of the time period, let's see if I can get some light on there. Where's my flash? Has components on the bottom of the board, and from what my mirror has shown, these have all been changed out, so it's not anything I need to necessarily worry about, which is good. But I'll tell you, if I had been the one restoring this amp, I would have moved as many of the rear panel caps to the front as possible, like a fender, because when one of those needs to be changed out, not if, but when, tell you what, it gets expensive to do that job. But for now, all seems to be well on the other side of the board.